let's talk about boundaries. What do they look like? How do we set them? And why are they so damn hard to maintain? Boundaries are so difficult in any relationship, family, friends, romantic, work. Setting boundaries and maintaining them is not for the faint of heart. I'm about to turn 29, and it has taken me up till pretty much this point to really understand how to set and maintain a boundary. And I still don't think that I'm like an expert at it, but I do think I've learned a few things along the way. And I will say that I think so much of the quote unquote trauma that I've experienced so far in my dating life up till this point really could have been avoided if I understood the concept of boundaries and understood how to set them and how to maintain them. I think I would have saved myself a lot of headache and a whole lot of heartache. And I want to share a little bit about what I've learned, but I think it's important to kind of understand what it's looked like up to this point for me. And it's not easy for me to like admit some of this because like looking back on your past, it can sometimes be really hard to see that version of yourself and be like, why? Like, how did I let this happen? How, like, I don't recognize that girl in the picture, right? And like, that's how I really, really feel about my early 20s especially, but even my mid 20s. It was a mess in the relationship department, an absolute mess. And I think so often I fell into the category of the have your cake and eat it too girl because I did not understand what I deserved. I did not love myself enough to respect what I deserved. And I certainly did not know how to set a boundary. And the thing about boundaries is that if you don't set them for yourself, no one else is going to set them for you, and you will get walked all over. And it really started to mess with my head because I didn't understand how I was ending up in this perpetual cycle of the same thing, different guy. I didn't understand how all of my stories were ending in the exact same way. And it really starts to take a toll on your self-confidence and your self-esteem and your self-worth because you start to wonder, like, is it me? Am I the problem? Like, what's wrong with me that this keeps happening to me? Why do people keep taking and taking and taking and I never feel like I'm getting what everyone else is getting, or maybe what you think you deserve? And that's kind of the headspace that I was in. And it took a lot of self-work and self-realization to realize that maybe I am in fact partially the problem. That's not a fun thing to realize, but I do think it was kind of an aha moment for me, realizing that so much of what has happened to me, I actually did have a lot of control over. I just chose to not exercise any of that control. And, you know, I started doing a lot of work on myself about 2 years ago. If you've watched my channel, you know that I got sober for a really long time. I have been single for pretty much the last 2 years. I've done a lot of work on figuring out who I am and what I like and what I want my life to look like. I've really tried to feed into myself, and it has not been an easy process. It's not as easy as Instagram will make you think. It's not a 5-step program. Like, it's a long and hard and sometimes really lonely journey, but I don't think that I would have gotten to where I am today in this department had I not kind of gone through that. And you know, I just recently went through a quote-unquote breakup. You know, in today's day and age in dating, half the time you're not even actually dating the person, but you still feel like you went through a breakup. So that's what I just went through. And I've practiced setting boundaries over the last 2 years, and I've been pretty good at it. But I think this last, you know, breakup that I went to is the first time that I can say that not only did I know what I deserved, I respected what I deserved, I set those boundaries in a very respectful way, and I'm maintaining them. And it feels really, really good. And so, you know, I wanted to share some of the lessons that I have learned throughout this learning process. And like I said, I am by no means an expert, and by no means does this mean that I am always going to set healthy and steadfast boundaries that I never falter on. That's not what I'm saying. Boundaries are very, very difficult. And anyone who says that boundaries are easy and that they can set them with, no second guesses, like, I'd love to be you, because quite frankly, it is just not me. I find it very, very difficult. And these 3 lessons that I'm going to share, though, I think were aha moments for me in understanding, 1, how to do it, 2, why it's so hard, and 3, giving myself a little bit of grace when maybe I do falter on my boundaries. So let's get to it. 3 lessons that I have learned about setting boundaries and maintaining boundaries, okay? Number 1, setting boundaries is for you, not for them. You can be nice, but you have to be assertive. And I think this is something that I have struggled with personally in this department. Is I wouldn't call myself a people pleaser, but I definitely care a lot about how other people feel. I don't ever want to be the reason for someone else being upset. I don't ever want to feel like I'm hurting another person in a relationship. So it's especially difficult to set a boundary when the other person doesn't want what you want, and the other person maybe is really pushing against the boundary that you're trying to set. It's really easy for me to kind of fall into the, okay, well, let's like find a compromise. That doesn't work. I'll tell you why it doesn't work. Because boundaries are for you and not for them. You really do, when you're setting boundaries, have to be very clear. And I think for me personally, I think it helps to explain to the other person, if you feel comfortable and like have that type of relationship with them, but to explain to the other person why you're setting that boundary and what has maybe led you to come up with that decision, and maybe what the future picture that you're looking for looks like. It doesn't mean that the other person is necessarily then going to want the same thing that you do, but I do think that it helps to rationalize the situation, because boundaries can be very, very difficult for both you to set and another person to follow. I think the first step is being clear about what you want. And that maybe takes some time with you by yourself to really get a clear understanding of what you want the relationship to look like moving forward. How does it need to end? What does it need to look like moving forward? What are the steps that you need to take? And relationships can be messy. Relationships can be really messy. You may be in an intertwined friend group. You may have kids involved. There is so much that goes into changing the course of a relationship. And so I think that is partially why boundaries can be so difficult, because it can get so messy. And I think that's why you have to be so clear about what you want prior to setting boundaries, or else it's so easy to get them walked all over, or to just lose yourself in the plot of what's happening. So I always come back to remembering that boundaries are for you and not for them. Lesson number 2. Boundaries are one of the highest forms of self-respect. This took me so long to wrap my head around and fully believe and understand, is that boundaries are about respecting what you want, what you need, and what you deserve. Again, I go back to lesson 1, boundaries are for you. When I set and maintain boundaries with someone and I actually respect those boundaries, I feel so good about myself, because I feel like I'm really respecting myself. I feel like I'm really loving myself. I feel like I'm showing up for me. And like I said earlier, if you don't set boundaries for yourself, no one else is going to set them for you. The other person is always going to be setting boundaries or maintaining boundaries that work for them in their scenario, in their role in the situation. You are the only one that can be an advocate for yourself in a situation. And It truly is the highest, one of the highest forms of self-respect that you can show for yourself. And I promise you that the first time that you do it and feel successful at it, you will feel so much better about yourself. You know, when you're in a relationship and it ends and, hey, you know, when you're in a relationship and it ends and you end up in that really messy gray area at the end where you don't have boundaries set and you kind of keep falling back into old patterns or falling back into old ways, but it's never what it should be. Lived in that space for far too long. That makes you feel so bad about yourself, and it makes you feel like you're on a merry-go-round that you can't get off of, and it makes you feel like you're going a little crazy. And that is because you're not setting boundaries that respect what you deserve. And showing yourself that form of self-respect will make you feel so good about yourself. I'm not saying that it's gonna be easy. I'm not saying that it makes the situation any easier. I'm not saying that it makes figuring out your feelings any easier or falling out of love or whatever it may be. I'm not saying it makes it any easier. I'm just saying that you can lay your head on your pillow at night and feel good about yourself, and that is a major win. Because so often at the end of relationships, that messy gray area, on top of having to deal with the feelings that you're trying to get over, on top of maybe unraveling your life, you also lay your head down on the pillow at night and don't feel great about yourself. Because you know that it shouldn't be like this. You don't understand why it keeps happening like this. You don't understand why you can't get off the merry-go-round. And I'm telling you, the first time that you set those boundaries and maintain them, you will be so proud of yourself. And that is a win. That is something you can wake up in the morning and feel proud of. Lesson number 3. A person's respect of your boundaries shows their respect for you. I'm gonna say it again. A person's respect of your boundaries shows their respect for you. If a person does not respect your boundaries, there is a part of them that does not respect you. That does not mean that they're doing it maliciously. That does not mean that they are a bad person. Sometimes they are doing it maliciously, but that's not what I'm saying. Boundaries are hard on both sides of the line. Boundaries are very hard to accept from another person, and boundaries are very hard to set for someone else. So I'm not saying this to be negative about the other person, but when you are wavering on giving into a boundary or really trying to fight back the urge to not give in to what another person wants, even though you know that the boundary that you've set is for yourself and respecting yourself, just remember that you are showing respect to yourself, and the person that cares about you needs to show that same respect back in return. And on the flip side, if you are having the boundaries set for you by someone else, you have to show that person the respect that they deserve and give their boundary the respect it deserves. Because they're doing this for themselves. They're trying to be better for themselves. They're trying to do what's best for both of you. And it can be really, really difficult. But I do think that setting boundaries and respecting boundaries is such a sign of mutual respect in a relationship. And I think that ultimately it is what leads to, 1, a healthy breakup, 2, potentially friendships or just niceties afterward, and 3, if you are looking to maybe reconcile in the future, that is the ultimate way to be able to end what's currently happening on a respectful note. Don't get yourself caught up in that messy, messy gray area, which tends to just torpedo relationships, and ultimately build a strong foundation for maybe restarting something in the future. I really think that boundaries, setting them and respecting them on both sides of the line, is the key to having a healthy breakup. Breakups are really, really hard, and they're really not fun, and they can get really messy. And I think trying to mitigate that as much as possible is the best way to go about it. And I think boundaries are a really good first step. And just a little nugget of advice that we're gonna end this on is, I'm saying all of this as someone that is speaking from experience. I have tried and failed to maintain boundaries so many times in my life, and I will continue, I'm sure, to try and fail to maintain boundaries in my life. Boundaries are so difficult. I think you learn with each new time that you do it. I think you learn a little bit about yourself. Everybody else's personality is different, so every boundary setting encounter is going to be different. It is a learning experience. Do not be so hard on yourself. If you slip, it's okay. It's okay. Rewind, reset, and try again. I think just really making an effort to try to understand what you need, what you want, what you deserve, and implement boundaries goes such a long way. I really do think that you get better at it with practice. I think it's something that takes time, and I can't stress enough that I think the root of great boundary setting is loving yourself. I don't think you can set and maintain healthy boundaries without understanding what you deserve and truly believing what you deserve and loving yourself enough to choose yourself. I think that is what the root of boundary setting is loving yourself. Thank you so much for joining me with another video. As always, please be sure to drop me some comments, especially on this topic. I love to hear about other people's experiences and maybe some tips or tricks or things that you've learned along the way. I think the comment section is a great place to share wisdom on this topic. We have all encountered so many different things when it comes to this, and I think we can all learn a little something from each other. So please be sure to drop me a comment in the comment section below. Like, share this video, and please subscribe to the channel. I will see you back next time.